Well, we as a church are absolutely terrible at keeping secrets. If ever I need a secret, this is the last place I'm coming to keep it, because I think just about everybody knows who's speaking today. Does anybody not know who's speaking today? Raise your hand, and I'm sorry nobody got to you. Okay, Dawn, you know who's speaking, Dawn. Dawn knows. You don't? Okay. Well, this week we are going to have, and I know what you guys are thinking, Pastor, are you ever preaching again? Right? Listen, you'll get so much of me here in a little bit, you'll be sick of me, right? But this week we are going to have the newest mom in our congregation come and speak for us on Mother's Day. This is the first time ever, right, that you have spoken in public. And when I first asked her, she gave me that look like, you're not really asking me to do public speaking, are you? But Taylor, I have found, is capable of doing absolutely anything I can ask of her. I don't think I've asked anything, and she's not like, yeah, I can do that. It will happen. I have long told Jake, she is going to bring balance to your life, right? She is an amazing person, and we're just so blessed to have you. There should be more good things I say about you, too, right? Make you really embarrassed before you come up. Let's give a hand for Taylor.
Thank you. That was nice. So it does say newest mom. There might be a younger baby than Evie. I do see a younger baby than Evie in here. But we do have an announcement. We have baby number 2 on the way coming December. So yeah. Woohoo. I thought that I'd get that out, so that'll be the thing you remember, even if this, I faceplant today, Taylor's pregnant, it's great, okay? That's what you'll remember. All right. That worship was great. Elaine, you're awesome. That was wonderful. Always great. Okay, so today, I don't know if you got the title of my sermon up here. Maybe. It's coming. I called it Confession of a Youth Pastor's Wife / Evie's Mom. I needed to make it more of a Mother's Day sermon, so I put the / Evie's mom in there because I tried really hard to think of something about Mother's Day. He said, it's Mother's Day, you have to preach about mothers. Come up with 5 easy points. You said that. And I'm like, yeah, easy enough. I could do that. And so I sat there. I even told Jake, I actually sat there ridiculously hitting my head like mothers. What can I come up with to talk about mothers? And nothing. So I turned to trusty Google and started, Bible verse after Bible verse about moms. And they're all great Bible verses. I'm not going to put them down. But just nothing was speaking to my heart. God wasn't like, this is what you're going to use. And so I tried reading a mom book, like one of those parenting books for some inspiration. I started like chapter 1, and I got nothing. That's how desperate I was getting. We're like a week away. I looked at Jake. Should I be panicking? I have 1 week. Okay, 1 week. And I finally turned to Proverbs 31, right? That's the woman passage, okay? So surely something had to be good out of here that I could use for my sermon. And if you're not familiar with it, it's all about, the woman who wakes up early and she goes to bed late at night and she makes all the bed coverings and all her kids call her blessed. And it makes you kind of feel like, I'm so sorry, Jake, for all the things I'm lacking. But I read through it anyways. And so, we'll back up a little bit. As I'm trying to find a title or trying to find something to talk about, God had been speaking to me already for weeks about something specific, this confession of the youth pastor's wife / Evie's mom. And it had come up in conversations. It had come up in my devotional time multiple times. And then I go to this, Proverbs 31, and I read through the whole thing. And I get to the famous, verse, Proverbs 31:30. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord should be praised. And boom, there it was again. A woman who fears the Lord should be praised. You probably have heard that many of times, but that is a lot harder than it sounds, to fear the Lord, okay? God has been speaking to me over and over about my habit of people-pleasing. I am an absolute people-pleaser. And if you don't know what a people-pleaser is, let me tell you. Psychology Today says a people-pleaser is one of the nicest and most helpful people you know. They never say no, and you can always count on them for a favor. In fact, they spend a great deal of time doing things for other people. This also may be the reason I've told Pastor yes for everything he asked me to do. Yeah, I can do that. Sure, I can do that. All right? So it seems so sweet and cute and nice. Oh, that's so kind of her, but it's a curse. It really is a curse. Not that it's a curse to be up here, but that'll destroy you socially, and it will destroy you spiritually. People pleasers don't say no. They don't want to hurt the feelings of others, and they don't want people not to like them. It sounds pretty pathetic, but that's my confession. I'm a people pleaser. All right? At the core of a people pleaser is the fear of rejection and a fear of failure. Not only is this unhealthy, like I said, socially, but it is crippling spiritually. The Bible refers to this as a fear of man, or I'll say a fear of people. Okay? Men and women, all of them, all the people I fear. And do you know what the opposite of fearing people is? Fearing God, right? Okay? If you're going to either fear people or you're going to fear God, that's the decision you have to make. A woman who fears God is worthy of praise. We can't do both. In every conversation, every decision you make, the actions you take, all depend on whether or not you fear God or you fear people. That will rule your life. Fearing people and pleasing people affects you spiritually. It keeps me from ever shaking things up or rocking the boat. I don't ever want to offend anybody, right? Who wants to offend people? My opinions can't be too strong. Other people don't really like strong personalities that aren't agreeable, right? Okay, it sounds ridiculous. Does anyone else have this issue? I do. How could I ever tell anybody that they're wrong? That would be so wrong to do that. Okay, this is the fear of rejection, what a people pleaser is. Okay, so fearing people, all this comes along with that. Okay, you can't serve people and still be serving God, okay? One or the other is going to rule your life. So I do have a short video to show you that goes right along with this topic.
Hey, bro, look, check it out. Labradoodle.
What?
Yeah, right down there.
Oh, I love a good breed.
It's so good.
Yes, half lab, half moodle.
Wait, what?
Incredible.
Noodle?
Yeah.
No, that's
Moodle.
not a thing ever.
No, it totally is. A moodle.
Isn't that Dave from Econ?
Oh, yeah.
What is he doing up here?
He's probably just enjoying the view, man.
Wait, isn't Dave blind? We gotta warn him. Hey, Dave.
Whoa, bro. What are you doing? You can't just tell Dave what to do.
Wait, why?
Are you blind?
No.
Okay, so then you don't know what Dave's gone through. You can't really relate to him, man. Just let him be. He's totally fine.
He's literally slipping right now.
Okay, you're gonna get all up on him for slipping. Like everyone slips from here and there.
I don't
It's no
care if he
reason
slips.
for
I'm
us
just trying to
point
keep a guy from falling off a cliff.
No. Okay, listen. What I think you need to do right now is you just need to love him. You need to not point out
What does
his
that have to do with
weaknesses.
anything?
It has everything to do with everything. Okay, like if you point out his weaknesses, he won't feel loved. He won't feel accepted.
I'm just trying to keep a guy from going off the cliff.
No,
He's not even stopping.
You're
Dave.
not gonna, whoa, bro, stop it. You speak out against blind people. So many
is
people will be
wrong
upset
with
with you.
you?
No, so many people won't like you. But also, what if he doesn't like us anymore? You've ever thought about that?
Dave will be dead. I need to say, hey,
No,
Dave,
no.
Dave.
No.
Is someone there?
Yeah. Hey, Dave, how's it going? It's Charlie from school.
Oh, hey, man.
Doing this for Dave's birthday.
Maybe you can help me out. I seem to have lost the trail somewhere. You want to tell me if I'm going the right way?
Maybe he is lost. You're right. We should still just encourage him. Yeah. Hey, no, Dave. You're doing great, man. I love that you're out here, man. Too. I'm proud of you being out on this trail. You're doing great, man. You're doing great.
Oh. Okay, thanks, man. Guess I am going the right way.
Watch, he'll figure it out. You just gotta love him through his problems. Yeah, you got it, man. Dave, what are you doing? What? Dave.
This video is fictional. I hear all of you gasping. I told my mom, like, I have this really funny video, and she watched it, and she's like, that's not funny. Like, it was funny until the end, and then it's, ooh. That video is me. I am that guy. Just love them through their problems. They'll figure it out, right? I don't want them to turn away from me or turn away from Jesus because I'm trying to tell them the way to go, right? But how unloving was that to just let him walk off the cliff? You're doing great. You'll figure it out. No, now Dave's dead. Like, awful. Okay. All right. So, what I call this is the hippie Jesus. You know what I'm talking about? Like peace, love, joy, grace, acceptance, all the attractive aspects of Christianity. I can nail that. I got hippie Jesus down, okay? And I actually think most millennials do. That's just kind of the thing now. You just tolerate everybody, you love them. Don't be too pushy with what you have, right? And I nail that part. No one gets their feelings hurt with hippie Jesus. Hippie Jesus is the lovable kind that is never harsh, always agreeable. Not so much, right? Yes, Jesus has a lot of these things, love, joy, peace, all that. But he wasn't a doormat. He also teaches about speaking truth, especially his truth, the one that says he is the way, the truth, and the light. He teaches boldness, and he teaches us that we will suffer just as he did. The hippie Jesus I was referring to keeps their mouth shut when things get sticky. There is no boldness. That's too harsh. Only love, love, love. But honestly, how loving is it to let someone's life fall into shambles without doing anything to stop it, just letting it crumble? All right, so let's jump to Mark 8, 31 through 38. We're going to kind of walk through it a little bit. At this time, the Romans had control over the Jewish people. And so all the disciples that were with Jesus thought that Jesus would be this great and powerful ruler, that he's come to set us free from the Romans' rule. He's going to take over and, you know, all the happy and goodness after that. All right? And he was great and he was powerful, still is, but he intended to set them free in a whole different way that they weren't expecting. So verse 31 says, "Then he began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes, be killed, rise after 3 days." He was openly talking about this, so Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But turning around and looking at the disciples, he rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan, because you're not thinking about God's concerns but man's." Jesus just did that to Peter in front of all these disciples. Get behind me, Satan. Not just like, oh, please don't say that. Get behind me, Satan. That's harsh. That's something people-pleasing Taylor's not going to tell somebody. Get behind me, Satan, right? Okay? So I'd be thinking, what if Peter gets upset? What if he doesn't want to follow me anymore if I was Jesus? He wouldn't want to follow me anymore. But Jesus doesn't let any of this stop him. We need to be bold in our faith just as Jesus was. When Jesus heard something that went against what God was trying to accomplish, he spoke up about it. He knew what his Father was trying to do. Peter was thinking about earthly things and earthly matters. He was thinking about how Jesus was going to put a stop to the Roman rule over his people. Jesus was supposed to be a powerful ruler. He can't die. It was kind of Peter to be concerned, but Peter was not leaning into what God was planning to do. Peter had his own plan. It is kind of us people pleasers to think about others and not hurting their feelings. But how many times have you put aside God's will and God's command in the name of not hurting anyone's feelings? I know I definitely have. When does it stop trying to please man and instead please God? It is ever acceptable to be more concerned about what people think rather than what God thinks? You're probably like, no. Always God, what God thinks, right? In Matthew 10:28, it says, "And do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather fear him who can destroy both soul and body in hell." That's a verse. That's a hard verse to give you on Mother's Day. And even the people pleasing me is like, you can't talk about hell on Mother's Day? That's awful. But here I am, no more people pleasing, okay? We should fear God. Man can't do anything to us. I mean, they can, but not for eternity. Eternity is a whole different story, and that's what we're living for, okay? In Isaiah 2:22, it says, "Stop regarding man in whose nostrils is breath, for of what account is he?" Right? What account are we, really? And these verses aren't to show us how unimportant and unloved humans are, because it's quite opposite. In fact, God loves us more than we could even fathom. But if we fear people, put all our trust in the good people of the world, and live our lives to please people who do nothing in comparison to what God can do in our lives, That would be absolutely nonsense. It is God who we should trust, it is God who we should fear, and it is God that we should look to please. A better question might be, how many times have we chosen to stay silent while someone is walking off a cliff? Because maybe, you don't agree with people. I've done that before. I'm not going to agree with you. You're not living the right lifestyle. But I'm just not going to say anything. I'm just going to keep my trap shut and let you do your thing. We don't want to be politically incorrect. We don't want to be too involved. We don't really know what's going on, so we'll just lay low and let it play out. We let Satan play the same games with someone over and over again and keep to ourselves the way of escape. We have the way of escape. We know. A lot of us have been there. We've been in these exact situations. I am so guilty of this. Like I said, I'm the guy in the video saying I'll love them through their problems, right? And they'll just turn eventually to Jesus. They'll just know. They'll figure it out, and off the cliff they go. So think back up to like elementary school, okay? You're walking the halls and there's that bully. I don't know if any of you guys really encountered this, but there's the bully who just picks on the innocent kids and is beating up another kid, all right? Were you the kid just standing there, just watching like, ooh, don't really want to get involved? Or were you the hero that goes in and tries to stop him, right? The one who's standing by is just as guilty as the bully. You're not doing anything to stop what's going on. And in Jake's case, he was the one getting beat up, he said, so poor guy. All right, and my mom, I was talking to her earlier too, and she shared a quote with me from When Calls the Heart, one of her favorite shows. It says, when good people do nothing, bad things happen. And of course, bad things always are happening. But you have the answer, and I have the answer. We can't continue to keep it to ourselves why so many people live trapped and enslaved to their circumstances and their choices. People need what you have, whether they know it yet or not. Don't keep it to yourself. Do something about it. Don't just watch that little kid get smothered by that bigger kid, okay? Jump in there, do something about it. Some of you may not even be sure of what answer you do have. That's me, doubt myself sometimes. I don't know how much I really know. I don't know all the answers, and so I'll just get, trampled on out there. But if you know Jesus to be your Savior, if he has changed your life completely, if you know you are loved by a creator much bigger than you, you are a testament of what the changing power of Christ can do, and that alone is enough. You have your story. You have what God has used in your life and changed you completely. That is enough. You don't need to know everything. Of course, keep learning, so you do, when you encounter those situations, you have something to say, but you have enough. That is alone enough. You don't need to have it figured out. I didn't get to listen to Chris Stanley last week, but Jake was telling me that he said, if your kid was out, out and about, and someone's trying to attack your kid and hurt your kid, are you not going to jump in and save them just because you don't know Taekwondo, right? Or all these fancy things. No, you're going to use everything you have to go get your kid and save your kid. You just use it. You're scrappy, right? Be a scrappy Christian. All right, so clearly Peter didn't quite understand what it meant to be a follower of Jesus. Jesus goes on to say that if anyone wants to be my follower, he must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. If you were carrying around a big cross back in that day, it meant you were going to die. And Jesus is telling us, if we follow him, that we must deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me. That means we're going to die. Jesus isn't saying everyone will be physically crucified like he was, even though there was plenty of people that were. But he was saying that we need to be spiritually crucified with him. This means putting down our wants and our desires, instead living for God's plan. This means being bold with your faith. This means being willing to lose all popularity. This means being dependent on God. This means stepping in when you can see someone heading for a cliff and not being afraid of the rejection. Because you know what? Some people will just walk right off that cliff, no matter what you say, what you do. But how many lives could you save if you did step in and you did something about it, right? I think that's worth the chance. I mean, it's either you get nobody or you get a few, right? So when does it stop being all about us? When do we decide to put our popularity, pride, and earthly desires behind us and make it about Jesus? Dick Brogden, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of him, is a missionary in the Middle East. I read his devotional. I love it. Read it. It's called Live Dead. But he put it this way, your goal should be to die. That is what Jesus models for us. Death to self, death to sin, death that brings life to others. By faith, we understand that God brings life through death, and that we do not start living until we die. So I like the part that says God brings life through death. So through our death, God brings more life. That's kind of confusing. But yeah, when you're not living for yourself anymore and we have God in the forefront of our mind, he can do so much more. You know, like as a kid, you want to save the world. You want to do all these things. You can't do that much. Like altogether, yes, we can do a lot. But God can do more, way more than what we're going to get accomplished by ourselves. We do not start living until we die. He goes on to say, for whoever wants to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life because of me and the gospel will save it. For what does it benefit a man to gain the whole world, yet you lose his life? What can a man give in exchange for his life? For whoever is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will also be ashamed of him when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels. Jesus is pretty clear with his message. If you lose your life because of Jesus, you will save it. Don't try to save your life here on earth. Don't get wrapped up in the silly earthly things. That's how you lose your life. Life is so quick. Everyone always tells you, the blink of an eye, you know, your kids are huge, and yada, yada, yada. They tell me that all the time. The past year with Evie flew by. Don't get wrapped up in all the silly things. Money, girls, boys, whatever. Marriage even. Like, marriage is great. Marriage is godly, but I can't get wrapped up in it. It's about God. It's about us preparing each other for eternity. Have you heard those stories where people were prayed for and miracles happened? Addictions broken, marriages restored, healings. What about Pastor Robert Willis? That came, how long ago? A month or two ago, I don't know. And he was healed of Parkinson's. What? Like wild, wild, wild things. It was a lady from Texas who heard, or had a dream, right? A dream. Tell me if I'm wrong. Or had a dream, sent him up to Arkansas, right? To pray for this guy. That's obedience. That's just a dream. Some people are like, oh, dreams are dreams. No, she had a dream, called him up and said, hey, I had a dream about you. I'm going to come pray for you at your church. She comes and prays for him. He has no more Parkinson's. Gone. Like wild, okay? That's obedience. That's putting God in front of your life and not people. If she would have cared about what this guy's going to think, I'm nuts. These people think I'm nuts. Everyone thinks I'm nuts. But I'm going to go ahead and do it. Who cares? All right? What about when you hear about people turning to Christ, or whole villages giving their lives to God because someone followed the call of Jesus and shared the good news of Christ? Because someone was obedient to listen to the voice of God, because someone didn't fear the rejection of others, because someone was not afraid to fail, because some feared God rather than fearing people. This is the kind of life that I want to live. I want to unashamedly point people to Jesus whether they accept it or not. Okay, and to be honest, I used to be more that way. Like in high school, when I was first saved when I was 15, I had like the Jesus folders, everything I'd bring to school. And people would make fun of me, you know, at lunch table. I just didn't care. I'm like, I know what I have. It's great. Like, you're missing out on this. And I would tell people all the time about Jesus, and I would invite them to church. And I saw a lot of my friends, you know, whether they're still following the Lord or not, come to know the Lord, right? And even at the end of high school, we had to make these senior scrapbooks, and one of the girls put me in there to say like how much I impacted her relationship with God. That would have never happened unless it was me and someone else, and that's awesome. That's awesome. But somewhere I lost that. Somewhere I just wanted to people please and keep everybody happy, and I forgot about the bold Taylor who was, 15 and just didn't care. Like, I know what I have is good. So I know the healing power of Jesus. I have experienced it time and time again in my own life. I know the endless joy it brings. I have been freed from anxiety because I know that ultimately God is in control. The power of Jesus can do more than anything our medications can do. It can do more than anything our therapists can do. And the power of Jesus can do much more than anything earthly and temporary fixes can do. Don't get me wrong, take your medications and see your therapist. I'm not telling you to drop all that now. But the things God can do if we would just take the step and allow him to move, amazing, like unfathomable. I don't even know yet because I just haven't done it, right? Today is the day, okay? All right, this life isn't unattainable. It's just obedience, putting aside your fear of rejection, setting your mind on eternity and not on earthly perishable things. This is easier said than done, but there's hope for all of us. Even Peter who was rebuked publicly in front of lots of people, okay? In Acts, Peter starts to understand what it looks like to follow Christ. In Acts chapter 5, Peter and some disciples were performing numerous miracles. Okay, so he's on the streets. People aren't the Pharisees aren't happy about it. Okay, he's on the streets performing numerous miracles now. This is not the guy who was just like, I had my own plans. I don't know what God's doing. I'm going to do my own thing. Now he's all about God. Totally different Peter here. It was to the point that people would bring the sick out into the street just to catch the shadow of Peter walking by. And all these people were being healed. This is the same Peter previously publicly rebuked by Jesus. So there's hope for us. All right? In Acts 5:17 through 29, which this is a long one, I understand. But this wraps it all up, okay? So stick with me. It says, then the high priest took action. He and all his colleagues, those who belonged to the party of the Sadducees, were filled with jealousy. So they arrested the apostles and put them in the city jail. But an angel of the Lord opened the doors of the jail during the night, brought them out, and said, go and stand in the temple complex and tell the people all about this life. In obedience to this, they entered the temple complex at daybreak and began to teach. When the high priest and those who were with him arrived, they convened the Sanhedrin, the full Senate of the sons of Israel, and set orders to the jail to have them brought. But when the temple police got there, they did not find them in the jail, so they returned and reported. We found the jail securely locked with guards standing in front of the doors, but we opened them, we found no one inside. As the commander of the temple police and the chief priests heard these things, they were baffled about them as to what could have come of this. Someone came and reported to them, look, the men you put in jail are standing in the temple complex and teaching the people. These are the same people that were just arrested for standing in the complex and teaching the people. They arrested them. They're doing it again. And then the commander went with the temple police and brought them in without force because they were afraid the people might stone them. Because at this point, they're getting followers. People are seeing that these miracles are being done in Jesus' name. Okay, Peter is making an enormous impact. So much so that the officials are afraid to take them with force because they'll be stoned by the people. All right, so after they brought them in, they had them stand before the Sanhedrin and the high priest and asked, didn't we strictly order you not to teach in his name? And look, you have filled Jerusalem with your teaching and are determined to bring this man's blood on us. But Peter and the apostles replied, we must obey God rather than man. Crazy. Like, that's the same Peter we were just talking about, okay? So don't preach, keeps preaching, right? And he does this over and over again. Peter gets it. He puts his desires and his plans aside. He had died to himself in order to fulfill God's plans, even if it meant jail time, beatings, and whatever else may come. It was worth it to him. He obeys God and not man. And this doesn't specifically say it in the Bible, but just in history, like history books, Peter was the one that was hung, crucified upside down. Like, to that point, he obeyed God. He didn't give in to people and the fear of people. He went that far. Incredible. Eventually, in this situation, they let Peter free. They said, if this is of man, it will cease like previous religious radicals. Because in that time, there were people who, were like Jesus, where they just claimed to be these religious, awesome people, and they had, a couple hundred followers, and then they died, and all the followers dispersed, and there was nothing of it. Like, it just ended, okay? And so they're saying, if that Jesus is of man, and what they're doing, this will die off. But if not, we know it was from God. So they let him go. And what do you think happened? Okay, here I am standing, able to preach this message before you, years and years and years later. And here many of you sit with the same faith that Peter had. I would definitely say that this was something from God. Do you think Peter knew what kind of impact he would have generation after generation? Do you think he knew that small steps, like just going to stand in the complex and preach to people, would affect this many people? How many years later? All these people in this room. Wild. And more. Way more. Okay? Absolutely not. He did not. He just did what God called him to do. Because of his obedience, millions of people have had radical life changes, and his life still impacts those of today. We see this change in Peter after he begins to lean into the Holy Spirit. It wasn't until Acts when he had the Holy Spirit where he just, all of a sudden becomes this dynamite apostle. If you are like the previous Peter, like myself, and struggle to keep God's plan first, don't lose hope. You can lean on the Holy Spirit too. It's available to us. We know that. right? We just have to use it. We just have to use it, and that's what comes, the boldness, all of that. We can be Peter, okay? Doesn't sound that enticing, does it, though? I mean, he just, died later. But, right, he put God's plan first, and I am sure that his suffering was joyful. I read something else, too, that say if you don't have joyful suffering, you're not doing it right. You're just miserable. It's true, right? Suffering for God is joyful, all right? He suffered the same things. We need to allow the Holy Spirit to guide us. Nothing on this earth would be more satisfying than leaving an incredible legacy for God. More lives will be changed leaving a legacy for God rather than leaving your own legacy. Who cares if people remember your name? Will they remember God's name? So, as mothers, we have a huge job to do to point our kids to Christ. God can use your life so much to impact your children and their children's children. So if Peter had this impact for these millions of people afterwards, he wasn't a mother, I mean, we all should be spreading the gospel. But as a mom, to spread that to your children, you don't know how many generations that's going to go. That's a major impact. No amount of wisdom you pass down can amount to the gift of Christ to your children. What a legacy it will leave. Don't let the fear of other moms or the fear of your own family, your kids, keep you from pointing your kids to Christ. It's not the popular way. It will be hard, but it's worth it, and it's a lasting legacy. All right, the worship team wants to come play. I saw this in my own family growing up because my mom was the first to get saved in our family. So she had people throughout her life planting seeds here and there, and then eventually someone gave her a purpose-driven life book and all this different stuff. So she started bringing us to church when I was like 3. And honestly, I only came for snack bucket. Like, yeah, I love snacks. Warheads with Mrs. Wesemann. She was one of my teachers. Jake's mom was one of my teachers. So that's why I was going to church. But my mom was there bringing us, and she was going to the Bible studies, and she was, one step at a time, taking us to church, just trying to do what God was telling her to do. That's what she was doing. But she didn't have kids who truly followed the Lord, and she didn't have a husband at the time who followed the Lord. How hard do you think it is to tell your husband to tithe 10% of his income when he doesn't believe in the Lord? Right? I'm just assuming that caused problems. I don't really know. But different things like that. And my dad, if he didn't want to go to church, I wasn't going to go to church, right? I didn't do what my dad didn't do. So I can't imagine how hard it was for my mom to get through that time. But she stuck to it. And eventually they got moved away to Kansas City, Missouri, and my dad started following the Lord, and we got more serious. And still being just mean teenage girls, we would call my mom a nun because she would make us, dress modestly. That's a huge deal. Mom, why? Why can't I wear what I want? But she did all the things not to make rules, but to just keep pointing our hearts to Christ, right? She wanted us to turn this way, turn this way. It wasn't about the rules. But here I am. It worked eventually, right? So all of her suffering and her pain and her mean kids and maybe her mean husband sometimes. They're great now. They're great. But was worth it. And now my relationship affects my husband, and it affects my kid, affects my future kid. It affects your kids that you let me teach on Wednesdays and your youth group kids that I teach. Well, I'm just there on Sundays. But that's because of what my mom did and the people who planted seeds before that.